Hi, I'm John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In these challenging economic times, it's imperative that our residents and businesses band together to not only shop Elmhurst, but buy Elmhurst whenever possible. We have great stores in our city center, Spring Road, Butterfield Road, York and Villette Streets, St. Charles and Route 83, North Avenue and Lake Street, along North York and even Grand Avenue. I ask for your help. Let's keep our tax dollars in Elmhurst.
Good morning and welcome to Community Conversations. Thank you for coming out on this brisk morning. It was just last weekend. It was one of the most beautiful weekends, and unfortunately I think it's the roll of the dice with the good old weather. My name is Cathy Jordan and I am the chair for the Elmhurst Senior Commission. Thank you so much for coming. The commission provides information, advice, and advocacy to enhance the quality of life for adults in Elmhurst. Before we start, I'd like to thank the people who provided us with the treats. That was from Park Place. Let's give them a round of applause. And I'd also like to thank Steve Morley and the City Council and Jim Grabowski, our city manager, for all their support for the Senior Commission. We are the Education Committee, which likes to give you presentations that will arm you with information that when you need it, you'll have it, instead of in a situation of crisis looking for information and then having to make bad decisions. So I hope you enjoyed today's community conversation. I'd also like to recognize our commissioners that are here today. Without them and without all of their help, they are such a dedicated group, we would not be able to come up with some of the presentations that we are actually providing to you. I'm going to ask that they give you a little wave. Some of them are up here, some of them are downstairs. We have Cathy Lorenz, Peggy LaCicero, Ruth Maple, we have Grayson Haller, Chris Hansen is downstairs, and Jackie Haddad. And I hope I've mentioned everyone. We also have Angela Benston, who is from Metropolitan Family Services. She actually has a senior office here in City Hall, and if you have any kind of a situation, she gave a wonderful presentation last year, and she will help you with any kind of a situation that you have or point you in the right direction. So Angela, give a little wave. She's been a wonderful resource for the city and for the seniors in Elmhurst. Today, our presentation is about the reality of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, which is changing dramatically from the time it has entered into the arena of a senior's life, myself included. It's very confusing, and Byron will be able to shed some light on all of the updates that will be happening in 2015. But let me tell you a little bit about Byron. Byron Spencer has 40 years of experience in all phases of business and personal insurance, including 10 years managing a $650 million division of a large insurance company. Since 1988, Byron has been the president and co-founder of Norman Spencer Incorporated, a leading national broker. He also serves as CEO of Norman Spencer International. He is a consultant to many national business associations and is a frequent speaker. Byron has devoted the time to thoroughly study the tens of thousands of pages of the ACA law and subsequent HHS published implementation guidelines. It is my pleasure to introduce Byron Spencer.
Thanks, Cathy, and thanks to all of you for coming out this first 30-degree morning in Elmhurst. I'll add to that I'm a 30-plus year Elmhurst resident and proud to be so. And the presentation today is more or less an update. I did one of these for this group. I looked it up yesterday, and it was 2 years ago. And at that time, we were breaking down the technical parts of the law, and it was a great deal of information, and we made some predictions, and I think we did very, very well at the predictions, some good, some not so good. And today, the goal is to do an update, to say what has happened from November 2012 until October 2014, and what are we facing as we go forward, what to expect. We will have to go backwards a little bit on a couple of things to, I guess, redevelop the concepts of what some of these things are. And I'll apologize in advance to say that some of this is subject matter that you could probably spend 20 minutes on one particular topic. We're going to do a very 30,000-foot kind of overview of this thing, and not all of it is going to be specific to seniors. And the reason for that is a great deal of the other things that are going on inside the law will affect seniors, and each of us that are seniors have children and grandchildren that have needs, and I think it's important for you to understand and know what some of the options are. Oddly enough, I'm the supposed expert, and my son-in-law called me last night with a question for his brother. And it's everybody out there. It is a complicated situation, a complicated law. The other little apology I'll make up front is with the setup here, I can't see the slides. So every once in a while, I will need to sort of turn and make sure that we're on the right information. If I'm totally off base, somebody wave their hand and say, you're talking about something that's not even on the slide. Well, the name, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act kind of got dropped along the way. A lot of us in the insurance industry call it ACA, Affordable Care Act. I don't know if it's affordable or not, but the reality is the news media and even the president today seems to refer to it as Obamacare. So I probably will mostly use ACA, but we're talking about the same thing. So all of those things, if you hear them, PPACA, ACA, and Obamacare are all one and the same. It was a 2,562-page law enacted 3/23/2010. I was one of those individuals that read this law, contrary to maybe some of the folks that voted for it. And it is a colossal piece of work. It's really broken into two laws. One is a House bill and one's a Senate bill that reconciles. And so inside of it were some big concepts that needed for the administrative people. You've probably heard the name Kathleen Sebelius, who caught a lot of the flack for some of the rollout problems that they had. They developed tens of thousands of pages of regulations that implemented this over a 8-year scheduled rollout. This is a fluid thing. Much of it is fairly final, but it seems like they come out with new stuff really still quite frequently to adjust some of these rules. And now we're into the phase that the IRS was envisioned in the law to be the enforcer. And so any of the penalties and taxes and everything that were involved to pay for this thing, the IRS is the arm that's supposed to collect this penalties and taxes. And they have also published a lot of guidelines, but some of them are still pending. This will be the first year, for instance, that the individual penalty will be collected. In 2014, I'm sure if you listen to the news at all, know that the exchanges rolled out and a lot of the facets of this law began to take effect. I wanted to take a look at some of the key concepts and try to think of these as just global issues of saying, if the goal of this law was to insure more people, how are we going to accomplish that? And the concepts that were built into these 2,000 plus pages was, number one, we're going to expand Medicaid. And the idea was Medicaid is available to folks that are at the poverty level. And Medicaid is a free health care, basically. And government taxpayer paid health care. And the idea was in the law to, with a stroke of the pen, increase that poverty level 33% as regards Medicaid. They wanted to subsidize premiums for folks in the lower end of income up to a level of 400% of poverty level. To give you an idea, in the 48 states right now, poverty level is $11,580, something around that. So if you make under $11,580, you are deemed as poverty, and all sorts of things become available to you. They wanted to subsidize the premiums up to the 400% level. They wanted to leave young adults on their parents' coverage if their parents had coverage, and they wanted to mandate that by law. And they wanted to be able to offer an open enrollment of some sort. And when we use the term open enrollment, we mean that anyone can come in, regardless of whether they're sick, regardless of anything that's going on with their health at that time. And so that was the provision of the plan that was to say folks that had serious medical issues in the past had sometimes had a hard time getting coverage in the event they lost their jobs or whatever the case may be. They wanted to create a Amazon or eBay style website where people could come and shop for health care. The health care is not underwritten by the taxpayers or the government. Independent insurance companies would then try to sell their products on this website. That was the concept. And so all of this was envisioned to increase the number of insureds. How are we going to pay for that? Well, the way the law is written, we're going to pay for it with 19 tax increases. We're going to pay for it with corporate and individual penalties. We're going to pay for it by cutting Medicare. And we're going to pay for the balance of it with deficit spending or taxpayer dollars. What kind of coverage has changed? These things have already occurred. Coverage was changed to require no lifetime maximum of benefit. Back in the day, some of you might remember insurance programs had $1 million or $5 million limits, and sometimes if you were very ill with cancer or whatever, this might become an issue. The new plans have no lifetime maximum. No annual limits on what the government describes as essential benefits. And there are, each state has defined for themselves what an essential benefit is. And there are 13 or 14 key variables that are defined. And in those areas, the plans that are being offered on the exchanges or off the exchanges may not limit those in any way with an annual sublimit. So we have no lifetime, no annual on essential benefits. Dependents are now covered to 26 on parents' policies. So in essence, most of those policies back in the day kicked out at 21. And now we've extended them 5 years. One of the more expensive parts of the law is this 100% preventative care that's defined by the government. And what that means is there are certain things that the government decided would be necessary for everyone, and these need to be covered without a deductible or without any copay. And these are things like an annual visit to a doctor, like certain diagnostic tests. And so today in these plans, those things must be covered and paid for with the premium of the plan. Even if you don't utilize those services, you're paying for them anyway. They instituted what was called a minimum loss ratio calculation, and that was to take a look at the relationship between the claims that an insurance company was paying versus the premium that they were receiving. And for large group plans, they wanted the insurance company to pay 85% of the premium out in claims and have 15% for their administrative costs to handle the claims and all that kind of thing. For small, they allowed to 80%. And if the company in its whole global book of business did not achieve those goals, then there would be a refund demanded. All of the plans have been standardized. Back before this law, you could pick and choose the coverages you wanted and the coverages you didn't want. For instance, you may remember you could choose to cover pregnancy or not. You could choose to cover certain drugs or not. And in today's world, every plan's the same, and everybody gets the same plan and has to pay for the same plan regardless of their needs. So if you look at these things today, there really isn't any difference. And in 2014, in prep for that, you may have heard some noise on press and that non-compliant plans were being removed from the marketplace. And there were several million people that did lose their health care plans, and thus some of the controversy politically, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan kind of discussion. Talk about the taxes. First tax to come online, medical device tax. This is to the manufacturers of medical devices. This would be things like replacement knees, hips, pacemakers, any kind of medical devices that are installed in the body. The manufacturer now has an additional 2.9% tax. Individuals making more than $200,000 a year. There you go. Individuals making more than $200,000 a year have an additional 9/10 of 1 point tax on their Medicare tax and a 3.8% tax on any investment income. So if you have investments or you sell a piece of rental property or whatever the case may be, it's a 3.8% tax that can be coming your way. They instituted what they called a comparative effectiveness research, and to fund this alone, they charge $2 a head for everyone that has insurance in the country. They created what is called a transitional reinsurance fee. In order to incent the insurance companies to participate, remember now, they have to take all comers. So it doesn't matter how sick you are, they have to take you. And in order to incent them to do this and to take this risk, the government has told them that for the first 3 years, we will not allow you to lose money. So you're underwritten by the taxpayers for the first 3 years to try to get this thing off the ground. And then in the law, they turn around and tax the insured population to help pay for this. And this year the fee is $63 a person. So if you have insurance through your employer is paying an extra $63 for each person. If you are buying it yourself, your premiums will include a $63 fee or tax, and that is just coming online this year. As a matter of fact, the first reports on that will go out in November. Branded drugs were taxed. And part of that is to try to incentivize, I think, folks to use the generics were available. And that started out at a $2 billion level for the drug industry and rises up to a $4.1 billion level in 2016, I think, 16 or 18, I can't remember. In 2018, there's a built-in 40% excise tax for what's defined as a high-cost plan. And the idea here was if you're getting a very Cadillac kind of a plan, that they were going to tax you for this. Unfortunately, the way the prices have gone up, right now, most everybody will hit into that number and is projected to hit into that number by 2018. So I fully see that being adjusted. I don't see that standing. Now, all of these taxes were estimated by the Congressional Budget Office, and I try to use their numbers because we hope they're not political. It's an organization that supposedly is there for the Congress to estimate these things for both sides of the fence. And they estimate $250 billion to come from these sources. Penalties. Individual mandate kicks in this year. It starts off at 1% of adjusted gross income and goes up to 2.5% by 2016. So it goes 1%, 2%, 2.5%. That may be, it'll be interesting to see how that process goes, because it may very well hit the young a little bit more than it hits us. The employer penalty was supposed to kick in 2015. They gave an extension on that. That comes back to 2015, and that is where companies with more than 50 employees have to provide health care or pay a fee. Now, interestingly enough, the fee is small in regard to what providing health care would cost, but still it seems that this has had some impact with employers trying to stay below 50 employees and employers cutting hours and some of this kind of thing. And this is the area that causes that. The health insurers were taxed directly. Started out at an $8 billion level, and it'll slide up to a $14.3 billion level. And the CBO estimates that that will produce $175 billion. The next is a big one, Medicare reductions. And inside the Medicare reductions, part of the concept was to go to what they call a value-based compensation system, where hospitals and providers are paid based on outcome parameters as defined by the government. And inside of this breakout, they estimated $716 billion to be cut, and you can see the areas that they're being cut from. $415 billion from fee-for-service, that would be your doctors, primarily. $156 billion from something called Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage is a all-inclusive tie-in plan, more popular in certain other states than in Illinois, but there are certain folks that have it in Illinois. $31 billion in direct payments to hospitals, and $114 billion in savings created by something called an Independent Payment Advisory Board, IPAB. And you may start to hear more about this. This is the quote-unquote death panels that have been referred to politically from time to time. It is a independent group of people appointed by the president, by Congress, and they are supposed to look at the value of procedures and whether certain procedures are worthwhile to be offered to seniors. And there's some controversy about that. This is not a super popular thing, but it is ongoing. So that's the reductions to Medicare that were designed to pay for some of these features. And then we have what kind of impacts have hit our providers. When I say providers, I mean doctors, hospitals, everyone in the system that's providing us service. First, I'm going to mention Medicare Reimbursement Cuts. And this seems to be having the impact of reducing the number of physicians that want to continue to participate in Medicare. Just a global concept that might be interesting, and that is if you take an insured patient and say they pay $1 for a service, Medicare pays about 86 or 87 cents. And it's just predetermined by the government. The healthcare providers realize that that's the case, but they also realize that seniors are major users of their services and deserve a discount as well. So then Medicaid is a percentage lower than that. And many of these cuts have been delayed at this point by Congress. And so we'll see where that goes. I'm hopeful that this is a provision of the law that will get removed. This would be my hope. You're going to hear more and more about something called an accountable care organization. And what an accountable care organization is envisioned to do, it's all part of this value-based service. And they want to try to link your primary health care provider, specialist, hospitals, the lab, everyone that's involved in any way in providing care to you to be linked into this one organizational structure. And if they do a good job as defined by the parameters that the government sets aside, then they will participate in bonus money. So it's going to form a method of incentivizing providers to meet these service parameters. And the idea is if they meet the service parameters, there will be money saved for all. These have been in the test phase, and there's some mixed results so far. But this and this next item, which is the medical records, there was a requirement in the law that everything get automated, that all medical records be automated. And these two provisions, the accountable care organizations looming in the future and the medical records requirements, is what has driven the consolidation that you may have seen in the healthcare providers. Every single one of my doctors has been bought out by a hospital. My primary care physician, my cardiologist, and I had a neurosurgeon for back surgery. All of these have been purchased. My wife's physicians have all been purchased. And so now you see they're one organization. And the driving of that consolidation is the need to comply with these two major provisions. And it's difficult for a single doc out there on his own or her own to afford to play ball in this system. Let's talk about Medicaid expansion and what has actually happened. As I mentioned, the idea was to expand Medicaid 33%. You'll see the income numbers that would be equal to that for 2014. $15,521 for an individual, $31,720 for a family of four. Now, one of the problems of this is another piece that was only federally funded for 3 years. And so a number of states, if you realize how Medicaid works, it's a federal plan, but the states have to pay for it. So it's what occurred was a number of the states went to the Supreme Court and said, the federal government can't require what they call an unfunded mandate, where they're telling you have to do it, but they're not giving me the money to do it. And so the Supreme Court sided with that, and they said the states could decide if they wanted to expand or not expand. 27 of the states decided to expand. And of those 27 states, Illinois is one of the states that decided to expand. And in the last 12 months, 8 million more people signed up for Medicaid. 8 million more people for Medicaid. And I thought it was of interest to say, how did that spread out? And you can see from the chart that the majority of that growth came in the states with that accepted the 133%. So you can see that 15%, the overall average growth of 10%, 15% of it was in those states, and only 3% of it was in the states that did not accept it. We don't know statistically how many of those 8 million would have been eligible anyway. So it's not a real good statistic. This again came from the CBO, and then the chart came from the Kaiser Foundation, Family Foundation, which is a really good research arm of Kaiser Health out of California. So I don't know what all that means. I just thought it was interesting to say, did it work? Obviously, this part of it seems to have worked. Let's talk about exchanges. There's different types of exchanges. When we use the word exchange, what we're really referring to is this virtual mall thing that I mentioned at the beginning of where somebody can go and shop. And all of these are computer driven. So there's not a store. You talk to an agent. The agent's going to have to go on the website just the same as anybody else. It is a web-driven marketplace. And here again, because of the funding requirements, not every state chose to participate. And 17 states chose to build their own shopping mall online. 27 states decided that they didn't have the money or the wherewithal to do that, and they would default to the federal plan. And 7 states said, we plan to have our own exchange, so give us some money. And we promise that we will do this in the future. Illinois is one of those 7 states. So they're committed to do it in the future, but at this point, we here in Illinois default also to the federal. Then there's something called a private exchange, and this may catch some. You may have heard some about this, but the concept here is instead of providing health care to the employees, an employer gives them an amount of money and says, go out into this shopping mall and buy anything you want to buy. I'll give you $5,000 a year, and you buy what you want to buy and the way you want to buy it on the shopping mall. These also are virtual websites, and we are seeing certain types of employers leaning to this methodology because it fixes their expense. They know what they offered to give the employee, and that's that. I believe Walgreens has decided to do this for their employees. I think UPS has adopted this for certain parts of their employees, and we'll see if it catches on or not. It's something to be aware of. Then we have off-exchange plans, and you can buy basically the same thing off of direct from a carrier or whatever. So if you like Blue Cross Blue Shield, you go on their website, the plans that you look at will be identical to what's on the federal site. And we'll get into what those plans look like. But so there's a number of different access points. So even when the federal site was having all these issues, you could still access coverage through some of these other means. There is something to be aware of in the background, and that is there's a case in front of the Supreme Court that may get settled later this year called Halbig versus Burwell. And this is the question about the legality of the subsidies. And what it basically says is in the law, which is a fact, the subsidies were to only apply to state exchanges. The federal exchange was not qualified for subsidy. And that is not the way they have operated this thing. They have given it to everybody. And so if this case is decided, it could endanger the subsidies that have been given to non-state plans. Let's talk about the plans. What do they look like? You've probably heard some of these terms. They are named after metals: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And what some people are shocked with is these plans have some fairly large deductibles and out-of-pocket requirements. And the bronze plan is envisioned that the insurance pays 60% of your health care needs and you pay the other 40% out of pocket. And so on down the line up to the platinum where it's a 90-10. Obviously the prices are increase as you go to less out of pocket. all of the coverages are exactly the same. So if you look at a bronze or a silver or a gold, what's really covered by the plan is the same. What's different is how much of that cost you have to pay for and what your premium is. The federal subsidies this year go up to $46,680 for an individual and $95,400 for a family of 4. Now this slides based on the closer you get to those top numbers, the less of a subsidy you get. So the closer you are, if you, the ideal place in my mind to be is just above the poverty level, so you don't get shoved into Medicaid and you qualify for one of these metal plans with a pretty high subsidy. So that's the area where it's done well for certain people. Let's talk about the 2013-14 open enrollment. How did it go? What happened? Well, everybody heard about the website, and the website was the virtual mall, so to speak, was a disaster. And as such, it's working better at this point. I don't know if it's still 100%, but those, you've heard plenty about that. I'm not going to tell you much about that. The government hasn't shared a whole lot of results as to what really happened, and what we have pieced together here is the best I can make out from industry specs, from people that are insurance companies like Blue Cross and United Healthcare and other major people. It looks like about 7 million people enrolled, quote unquote. 1 million never paid any premium, so the coverage lapsed. 30% did not provide enough information to get a subsidy or to verify for the IRS whether they should get the subsidy or not. They have been given the subsidy. They just didn't have the right information in there. And two main facts that I want you to think about. In order for this thing to work on a long-term basis, we need the 18 to 34 age band to participate. We need the younger people to buy. And the estimate right now is we had about 1.5 million young people buy. Now, we don't know how many of those people had health care before. There's really no way to find that information out. But our best guess out of all of this is that we probably picked up about 2 million former uninsured people through the enrollment in 2013-2014. Let's look at the enrollment for 2014-15. There is a methodology to obtain interim coverage. Now you got to remember the big concept, everybody can come in even if you're sick, but they didn't want people just to wait until they got sick and get coverage just when they got sick. And so the way they stopped that is there's only an open enrollment once a year. And there are short-term plans available for those that want to try to achieve coverage in between open enrollments. And those can be 30 up to like 9 months, you know, and they're just short-term. There's also a series of qualifying events, meaning you get divorced, you move, you get married, just any kind of major life event that happens to you can qualify you for an interim time to qualify to enroll during the middle of the year. This year, Medicare open enrollment starts the 15th of October and ends 12/7. This is the time for all Medicare recipients to really review their tie-in plans, to say, is your tie-in plan, is your Part D coverage what you want. Are you satisfied with it? If you're satisfied with it, you don't do anything. If you want to compare, the site that I recommend for that is www.medicare.gov, and in that site they have something called a plan finder, and you put your state in there, and they compare what they consider the most competitive and the best plans in the state, and it's a pretty good it's a pretty good deal. I mean, I use it. It's pretty informational. So Medicare.gov, and then the plan finder, and put your state in. The exchanges this year open 11/15, and they remain open till 2/15/15. And the website there is healthcare.gov. If you've got any family members that need to enroll, that kind of thing, that's the time to get them involved in that. Oh, there you go. Let's look at what's going on with the costs. And when this thing was first written, the CBO estimated that it would cost the taxpayer $944 billion. When we looked at it again in 2011, their estimate went to $1.4 trillion. When we looked at it again in 2012, it went to $1.8 trillion, and this year it went to $2.5 trillion. So the cost of this thing is growing exponentially over what was originally anticipated. Concerns, these are my concerns as someone who deals with it. We're seeing continued premium increases. We've averaged about 9% increase since 2010, so that's beginning to look like a real number. Some states have seen more. Illinois has been pretty steady on that 8-9% type range where the premiums are going up. I hear a lot of complaints from people saying it's not affordable because the deductibles and out-of-pocket are more money than they have. So even if they get coverage, they don't have the savings in place to be able to sustain an illness. And I've even heard people, unfortunately, use that as an excuse not to buy the plan to begin with. It's like, well, I can't afford the deductibles, so why should I even buy the plan? That's a concern of mine. The other concern that I have is the lack of participation of the young folks, 18 to 34. And we have to realize, they don't get sick. I think statistically, a person between 18 and 26 goes to the doctor 2 times in those years. So, they're not going to be big users, and I think they have a hard time figuring out why they should pay the premium. I worry about the provider consolidation. I'm not sure that hospital organizations owning everything and everybody is really good for competition in the long run. I have personally noticed some increase in billing, where it seems like I get a bill from the physician's office and I get a bill from the hospital. And sometimes the combination of those two seems higher than what maybe I saw before. So I worry about that. I worry about the slide we just saw before, that these cost estimates are increasing. I'm concerned with the Medicare reductions. I worry about this new payment advisory board getting involved in determining who may qualify for certain kinds of treatment. I hope that is not the case. And I guess I worry about this the most. The CBO estimates there'll still be 35 million people with no coverage at the end of the 10 years of this law. to me, that's a concern. So with that, I'll wrap up and bring Cathy back up. And that is my contact information if you want to ask me anything. And thank you, Cathy.
Let's give our speaker a round of applause. It's such a complex issue, and it's affecting everyone. So I really appreciate the information that you've given us, Byron, and thank you so much for coming today. Several things I'd like to remind you of. Many of you are already signed up for our next presentation, Planning for the Future, November 8th. So you don't have to recall, but we will give you a reminder call the week of. That is Carol Rasco, our Community Resource Coordinator for ElderWorks, will share information about home care, financial help, and other resources that can be used by seniors and their families for future planning at little or no cost. It should be very interesting, and I've been told by her that she is going to be bringing a resource book that you can also take home that day, which is very beneficial to have. It has many resources listed in it. One of the other things I'd like to share with you is our commission is planning, and it's further out. We'll be giving you more information as we get closer, but April 22nd, we will be having a transportation and housing fair at Wilder Mansion from 9 until 12. So as we get further information, we'll share that with you, but it's come to our attention that that's a situation that seniors want more information on, and we are willing to try and gather that information for you so that, again, you can make good decisions when you need to. Thank you again for coming. I always like to end with a little quote. Life in the moment, live in the moment, and make it so beautiful that it will be worth remembering. We want to thank you for coming and hope to see you on November 8th. Thank you.
Visit Elmhurst.org to explore the new City of Elmhurst website. Find out the latest Elmhurst news, pay utility bills and parking tickets, report concerns, and much more. Elmhurst.org is an ideal way to discover what Elmhurst offers your business, your family, your life.